Well, good morning and welcome back to the October 17, 2022 meeting of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. A link to view this meeting was provided on the Commission's website for the public. I want to thank the Tennessee General Assembly for allowing us to hold our quarterly meetings here for these past 2 days. Chase, let me ask you to call the roll of commissioners to reconvene us out of recess, please.
Commissioner Hanson.
Present.
Is present. Commissioner Levine.
Present.
Is present. Commissioner Patterson.
Here.
Is present. Commissioner Richards.
Here.
Is present. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Is present. Commissioner Tucker.
Here.
Is present. Commissioner Woodson. Here. Is present. Chairman Griscom.
Here.
Is present. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I want to note again that Commissioner Derwin Sisnett is not present today because he's involved in a charter school appeal that we will consider on today's agenda. And Commissioner Sisnett has been recused from participating in all New Start's appeal during this cycle. Today, the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission will be voting on 4 individual New Start appeals that the Commission received this summer. Pursuant to Commission Policy 1.200, the Commission shall allocate up to 30 minutes of public comment at each special called and regular meeting. Given the large volume of appeals, we've had 13 total, just so everybody is reminded of that. We are altering the public comment structure for this meeting. Before the Commission considers each appeal on today's agenda, we will hear up to 30 minutes of public comment, 15 minutes for individuals speaking in favor of denying the application, and then 15 minutes for those speaking in support of the application. We also have accepted unlimited written comments on each appeal. The written comment period for the appeals we will discuss today closed on Monday, October 17 at 1 p.m. Central Time, and all commissioners have been provided with the written comments submitted during this period. As we begin the appeal, I will ask Chase to note for the record the number of written comments received on behalf of each party of the appeal. Finally, each party in an appeal has been afforded the opportunity to provide a written statement or provide an oral public comment in response to the executive director's recommendation. This information will be heard by commissioners in advance of discussing the executive director's recommendation. The Commission will begin this meeting considering the Tennessee Nature Academy appeal. We will then consider the appeal from Binghamton Community School. The last 2 appeals up for consideration are from the Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy and the Academy of the Arts Charter High School. Are there any questions or comments regarding today's agenda?
Motion approved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. Before we start, as we normally do, I ask commissioners if anybody has a comment they'd like to make before we get into our first appeal. Commissioner Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't normally do this, but I wanted to make sure something was clear on the record from yesterday's appeals. As the commissioners know, at the end of the meeting yesterday, a couple of audience members yelled out some comments about the percentage of students with disabilities that were projected to be served in those schools, that we had the percentage wrong and that the percentage came from the number came from the state. And so I just want to clear up on the record from the amended applications for those 2 schools. The Williamson County School, page 78 of that amended application, stated that they were anticipating 728 students in their first year, and they anticipated enrolling 15 to 20 students with disabilities. If you do the math, 15 goes to 2%, 20 goes to 2.7%. So the 2%, that's where we got the 2%. Same exact numbers were stated in the Sumner County application on page 53. So I just wanted to be clear, those are not the state's numbers, those were not my numbers, those were their numbers. Thank you.
The first appeal on our agenda is for the Tennessee Nature Academy. Chase, can you note for the record the number of written statements received in support of each party in the appeal, and then can you please introduce individuals who registered to comment in support of Tennessee Nature Academy and those who registered to comment in support of Metro Nashville Public Schools?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For Tennessee Nature Academy, there were 52 written comments submitted. For Metro Nashville Public Schools, we had no public comments submitted in the written form. Our first public commenter is Beth Jane, and then I have Cheryl Stratford. Roger Waynick.
And as you're coming up, as Commissioner Woodson asked yesterday, would you please state your name and then what your affiliation is with the school? Okay. Whether meaning if you're employed or a parent, or that's okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So my name is Cheryl Stratford. I am affiliated with Tennessee Nature Academy as a volunteer, but also as a consultant. So there are some services that I advise on, and then there's a lot of it that I volunteer on. So my name is Cheryl. I'm here today as a parent to passionately advocate for Tennessee Nature Academy. I currently have 9+ years experience in the Southeast Nashville community engagement sector, along with, around education. Through TNA's community engagement and partnerships, I've witnessed families' excitement about the new opportunity. As of today, Tennessee Nature Academy has collaborated with dozens of community engagement events. And from that, there are currently 427 unique families that have expressed interest in this program. Out of those families, 147 have expressed commitment to enrolling for the Tennessee Nature Program. They've hosted an incredible fall festival event, which drew around 700 participants and gave the space for our diverse community engagement to be able to collaborate in one space. As a parent myself, I am frequent with communication with other parents in the community. I can really vouch that this is something that the families want and also need. Thank you.
Next, I have Roger Waynick and then Sarah Savage.
Beth just arrived. If she would like to go before me, we'll go back to her. Okay. Good morning. My name is Roger Waynick, and I'm the board chair for TNA. I'm also a Nashville resident, and I work as a senior management consultant in the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration. In April 2021, the Tennessee Department of Education entrusted a grant of over $683,000 to Jay Renfro to launch Tennessee Nature Academy. Since then, we have seen other reputable organizations display confidence in Jay's leadership by contributing to TNA. City Fund awarded $200,000, Volunteer Schools has pledged just over $38,000, and the Joe C. Davis Foundation has also pledged $200,000 in TNA, which sits on standby as our contingency fund. You will find written public comments submitted that corroborate this. These funding sources were not listed in our original application submitted in May. Our financial situation has evolved from May to October, as you would expect. What I hope to communicate is that though the specific sources of funding have evolved, our financial situation still remains stable, and TNA still remains financially viable as an organization. We are ready to open and serve Southeast Davidson County, and we hope that you will join those who have voted in confidence in support of us. Thank you.
Next, I have Sarah Savage, then David McGowan.
Hi, my name is Sarah Savage, and I'm the co-founder at Tennessee Nature Academy. I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in public comment today. I want to speak to a question that we received during our capacity interview. Our application requests a waiver for parts of SBE Rule 0520-02-03, which deals broadly with educator licensing. Our intention in requesting this waiver is to allow for greater flexibility in hiring candidates to serve on our network-based and school-based leadership teams. These teams include roles like our counselors and social workers, director of college access, outdoor experiences coordinator. We're asking for the flexibility to hire candidates for these and other leadership roles who are qualified and credentialed in their area of expertise, regardless of whether they also hold an active Tennessee instructional leadership license. Our application does clarify that educators would be required to be appropriately licensed for their positions in the classroom. Thank you for your consideration.
David McGowan and Beth Jane.
Good morning. My name is David McGowan. I am president of Region Homes. We are one of the largest home builders in the Middle Tennessee area. Also chief manager of McGowan Family LP. Currently, I have served the board of Venture Science Center for over 20 years, also as a past chairman. Served on Habitat Humanity for over 20 years currently, and have served as past chairman. McGowan family in 2020 donated 15.9 acres of land to Metro Public Schools for a new school. That land was valued at $1.6 million. In 2021, we donated 5 acres of land to the Metro Nashville Fire Department for a new firehouse to be built in the Crothers community. That land would be valued at $500,000. Crothers Farm community will have over 3,000 homes when completed. We have offered to donate 23 acres of land in this community. That land would be valued roughly at $2.3 million. This community will be a smart growth community. It'll have a mix of townhomes, condominiums, and single-family homes. When completed again, 3,000 homes. Our company has won all kinds of smart growth awards in the past. Thank you very much. Be glad to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
And then last I have Beth Jane.
I'm sorry I was late. We first met Mr. Renfro over a year ago. He was searching for providers of outsourced accounting services. We work with several of the successful charter schools here in the Nashville area, including Valor, STEM, Smithson, Craighead, Aventura. We also work with several out of the Nashville area and even in Austin, Texas. I'm a CPA firm with about 30 people, 8 CPAs. We engaged with Mr. Renfro, and in fact, after 6 months, he asked that we evaluate his day-to-day processes to ensure they were following best practices. We did that and feel very comfortable with our continued support that he will run a successful school and follow the budget. We had also worked with KIP and helped them transition to in-house and work with our charter schools in that way so that they have the best accounting and strategic planning support. Thank you.
In accordance with Commission Policy 2.000, a representative of each appeal has the opportunity to submit a written statement or be recognized for up to 2 minutes in advance of the Commission's discussion on the appeal. Chase, would you please read any statements received and introduce any representative who is here today?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have Mr. Jay Renfro from Tennessee Nature Academy.
Before I speak, I have verification that Kissy Gutierrez also signed up for public comment. Thank you.
If you don't mind, if you again would give us your name and why you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, now, Chase, let's get back to any written or public comments.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. From Tennessee Nature Academy, Mr. Renfro is here.
Highly esteemed developers ready to donate 23 acres of land for our permanent school site. The greatest obstacle for charters in Nashville today is affordable real estate, and we're fortunate to have that sorted out prior to getting off the list. I believe community-grown, single-site charters like ours plays a valuable role in the growth of the charter sector, and I hope you consider us today for authorization. Thank you.
Chase, are there any other comments, or is that anything to read into the record? We're going to take this while he fixes the mic.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I have a written statement here from Metro Nashville Public Schools. Dear members of the Commission, we urge you to adopt Executive Director Tess Stovall's findings that MNPS's denial of Tennessee Nature Academy's amended application was not contrary to the best interests of the students, the LEA, or the community, and to uphold her recommendation to deny its amended application. MNPS shares the Executive Director's concerns regarding TNA's financial capacity and ability to scale in the future. Perhaps most troubling is TNA's lack of documentation of sufficient funding to launch the school and sustain it through its initial years. MNPS agrees with the Executive Director's conclusion that TNA's application does not include a realistic plan sufficient to support the opening of a new charter school. TNA's proposed budget relied heavily on a grant which failed to materialize the sum of $233,000. As the Executive Director points out, the amended application fails to include documentation of any additional funding that has been secured to fully make up for this loss, leaving questions as to how required costs will be covered. As an example, MNPS's review team noted that TNA's startup budget did not include any rental costs for facilities or costs for tenant improvements. While improvement costs were included in the year one budget, the plan effectively prohibits improvements on the school's facility until after the first year of school, thereby denying any such improvements before students enter the building. As a contingency plan, TNA suggests cutting extras if additional funding cannot be secured. MNPS agrees with the report's finding that these unspecified extras must surely affect the academic programming offered by the school to the detriment of the students. These students should not shoulder the burden of TNA's lack of financial coordination and planning. Finally, MNPS shares the Executive Director's apprehension regarding the proposed provision of special education as required by state and federal law. While MNPS lacks confidence in the accessibility of TNA's programs for certain students with disabilities, TNA states that it plans to have a 1-to-10 teacher-to-student ratio for students receiving special education. Despite this, MNPS and the Executive Director found TNA's proposed budget lacks sufficient evidence to support the provision of special education and related services. Moreover, MNPS reiterates its concerns regarding staffing and teacher salary, concerns shared by the executive director. As the MNPS review team previously found, the financial allocations for teacher salaries were insufficient and not competitive. TNA's proposal to pay special educators a salary $10,000 less than other instructional staff is out of touch and unrealistic. It elicits serious questions about its ability to recruit and retain teachers to serve this special population. Failure to adequately serve special education students leaves the most vulnerable children at risk of not being able to fully access their education. Like the Commission, MNPS holds its charter schools to high standards. TNA's uncertain and unpredictable finances raise grave concerns about their ability to meet standards. As such, MNPS requests the Commission adopt the Executive Director's recommendation and uphold the decision to deny the application.
Is that it? We will now move to a presentation from our Executive Director, Tess Stovall, regarding Tennessee Nature Academy. Tess?
Thank you, Tess Stovall. And I do want to note for commissioners, coffee has arrived. So if you all need, during this next 3 or 4 hours, need some coffee, I will not be offended. So as we have noted, the first presentation before you all today is for Tennessee Nature Academy. Tennessee Nature Academy is proposing to locate in the Antioch-Cane Ridge area of Nashville. A review committee that was convened by Metro Nashville Public Schools recommended the application for a denial, both in the initial and amended application. The Board of Education subsequently denied the application in July of 2022. As we discussed yesterday, upon appeal, the Commission staff conducts a de novo on the record review of the amended application. We held a public hearing and accepted public comment. We also reviewed all information provided by all parties. It is based on this process and what was submitted in the record that I determined that the application that before us today does not meet or exceed the standards for approval as outlined in state law. While I note in my recommendation that the applicant and the sponsor have clear strengths with regard to their academic program and their community support, there is an uncertainty with regard to their financial plans, and therefore I am not recommending it for approval at this time. A lack of clarity regarding the financial expertise and oversight, budget assumptions, and committed revenue does not allow any academic program, no matter how strongly supported by the community, to be implemented successfully. And in fact, one of the primary reasons for charter schools to fail is a lack of financial oversight, financial expertise, and contingency planning. The applicant does present a very strong academic plan and instructional model, which is backed by best practices in research. It is a unique model for the Nashville area and uniquely suited for the Antioch-Cane Ridge cluster. I do agree that the academic plan itself has a clear plan for special populations. The applicant has consulted with an expert in this field, and that was clearly a difference between the initial and amended application and their plan for special populations. There's also clear evidence of community support. I think you're seeing it here today. We saw it in the public hearing, and we saw it in the amended application with 13 letters of support and numerous petition signatures. The operational plan itself does include strengths. They have identified a temporary facility, and they have, as you stated, have identified a long-term, at least a long-term facility site. The temporary facility, they do have a line of credit in which they said they would use it for upgrades for that temporary facility. But there was no information within the amended application or the budget for the financing for their long-term facility, which will have to be constructed. So there was no plan of how they would access additional financing or pay off that additional financing. I want to note that this is a significant gap and concern when we think about the long-term success of this school. They do have a temporary facility, as I stated, that they plan to be in for a couple of years, but they did say they will need to move to a long-term facility in the long term for the viability of the school. The applicant did provide a sufficient staffing plan. However, I note that there are concerns about what they have budgeted for the salaries for both their general education teachers as well as the teachers that they are planning to have certified in special education and EL. They do plan to operate with a limited leadership team in the years 0, 1, and 2. And I think it's important to note that the leadership team itself does have academic plan experience, which is very clear throughout their application, that the people who are proposing this school and were writing the application have deep academic experience. They acknowledge there's a gap in capacity when it comes to operations, so they are planning to hire a director of operations in the middle of their pre-opening year. What was lacking in the amended application and within the capacity interview was who on the team will be the financial day-to-day expert. I appreciate that the team saw a gap with regard to operations, and what we continue to see a gap with in the amended application, in the public hearing, and in the capacity interview was financial oversight and expertise. The financial section of the application specifically states that there needs to be a high level of financial expertise amongst the internal and external teams of the applicant. So in the public hearing, I asked very specific questions of who on the team will be running the day-to-day finances, who will be handling the flow of money in and out, who will be handling the grant reimbursements. And this was unclear. There was a lot of reliance on an outside vendor, which is important, but still there needs to be someone who is providing information to a vendor for it all to be correct and for things to run well. There was also a heavy reliance on board members. I think it's very important for board members to have financial expertise, but the board members are in a place to provide overall oversight and checks and balances, not to run the day-to-day finances. If approved, the authorizing staff that would be working with this school would have a significant lift to ensure that they are supported, trained, and provide the appropriate implementation of any when it comes to financial grants, BEP payments, and I want to acknowledge that because there is a gap in current expertise on the team. I also am concerned about many of the budget assumptions that were included in the proposed budget. This will mean that they will need additional contingency planning and funding immediately. Specifically, the general education teacher salary was an average of $51,000. For 6 teachers, that is at the very low end of the MNPS salary scale. SPED and EL teachers were budgeted at $41,000 on average, which is $10,000 less than the general education teacher. They had budgeted for 54 computers for 162 students, which is, they will simply just need more computers and technology to meet the state's testing requirements. Additionally, they only had budgeted for $20,000 for outdoor classroom implementation, which is a clear part of their plan. While I too note that plans evolve and budgets evolve, based on these budget assumptions, the school will simply need access to additional capital very quickly in order to meet, simply these items will come in over budget. And right now, I do not have confidence in the contingency planning and the funding that's available in order to feel like they will see strong success and viability in years 0 and 1. I would like to speak to the pre-opening funding that was mentioned. In the budget and in the application, there were 3 sources of grants that were listed as pre-opening. One was for the New School Ventures grant, one was for the Charter School Growth Fund grant, and one was for the Charter School Program grant for a total of $565,000. None of those grants have materialized or will materialize. I do appreciate the information that was provided in the capacity interview and the public hearing about additional grant funding to cover some of that. Again, I was told earlier today about additional grant funding that was just simply not in the application. It was not considered by the review committee. So I cannot speak to you about how that changes or doesn't change the overall viability of the plan. I am concerned that the majority of the startup funding that was detailed in the amended application will not materialize. And so myself, as the staff member who reviewed the entire record, and the review committee simply didn't have information to corroborate what was shared and what was stated. And so therefore it is very difficult for us to recommend something for approval when we simply don't have the detailed information and the commitments that were shared with us. I do want to note that it is the charge of the commission's process to conduct a de novo on the record review of the amended application that was reviewed by the district. And although there are specific places in our process where we collect additional information, we are constrained in terms of what the statute will allow us to collect and consider and amend that amended application. I do appreciate the passion and enthusiasm for the sponsor, and I recognize that this would be an innovative model. However, I still have concerns with regard to the financial planning and oversight as was described in the amended application and as I've discussed here today. There are material issues within the budget that, to me, give grave concern of whether or not they've appropriately budgeted for very key items that we know they will need. And I believe the school will need contingency planning immediately in order to implement its proposed academic plan. Any authorized charter school is entrusted with a great responsibility of both educating students and ensuring the oversight of significant public funds. I expect, and the commission expects, that only those who have the high likelihood of success and meet or exceed the standards required by the state scoring rubric are approved and authorized. And while this application presents many strengths, both in terms of the academic plan and community support, I cannot confirm at this point that there is a high likelihood of success financially. And given that, it is my recommendation that the commission uphold the decision of Metro Nashville Public Schools, that the applicant take all of the additional information and evolving plans that have been shared at this point to further refine their program for the future. And I am happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you, Tess, for your presentation. We will now move to questions and comments from commissioners, and I'm going to start, if y'all do not mind. I know this model because I have it in Hamilton County. Mm-hmm. It's called Ivy Academy, and they've just opened an elementary school this school year. And so it clearly has a lot of interest and has been a very beneficial part of the charter schools in Hamilton County. They are part of the Hamilton County school system. I would like to add that. They did not have to come to an appellate body to get approved. They also have a relationship with the state, where there's a state ranger who actually has an office on their campus. And so again, I've visited this school on a number of occasions and have seen the experience that these students have. It's very different. But also for these students, it's very meaningful. So I just wanted to share that with other commissioners, having seen this model and seeing that it works. I also appreciate this morning some of the, what I'll call clarifying information from questions I had. Mm-hmm. I was concerned because we have seen this already with other applicants when we talk about licensed teachers. Mm-hmm. And we had one particular school that we had to really stay on them as a commission and as a staff to make sure they realize that licensed teachers matters. And it's one of the issues we've heard over the past several months from those who were critical of this commission and the fact that did we have the capacity to consider 13 appeals, which I'm going to say as I did yesterday, I think we have shown, yes, we do. Mm-hmm. But the issue is raised is that we don't require teachers in charter schools to be licensed. So I was appreciated hearing that was not the case because it was somewhat unanswered, mm-hmm. having reviewed the material that was in the record for us to review for today's hearing. So I appreciated that. Also, questions that I had about the whole financial team, which you've referenced in your report, is knowing that you do need that expertise in-house so that you've got that day-to-day guidance and you do have clearly support that's been identified externally to provide that financial counsel. Because I have learned over the period of time being involved now with charter schools and the appeals we have that setting up a school is not easy. A lot of people with great intentions who really have a lot of passion to do this, and then they have to figure out how the school works. And I think it's important for us and for those who are here before us to understand and know that those issues, which I know you all take seriously, we do too. And that what we want to do is to approve schools not just because they have the passion, which clearly is evident with this school, but also have the knowledge to know how you put it together, set it up, and know operationally how it needs to work. And so again, I appreciate some of the additional comments this morning as it reflects on the financial operations for this proposed school. So with that, let me turn to other commissioners. I'm going to start with Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to follow up on that because, staying on the teacher licensing thing, I have had conversations with several superintendents, and I think what we've got to be careful about is not just saying that every position always has to be licensed. There are certain positions inside the classroom that must be licensed. However, there are a lot of superintendents that are also begging the state to look at teacher licensure for STEM and some of the things around welding, some of your trades-based programs that they're offering. There are some master electricians in this country that do incredible work that could not teach in our schools. And I just want to remind everybody that we don't even license teachers for our TCATs or for higher ed. There's a whole different process they go through. So I just want to make sure that as we're going through this, because I did hear, the organization I work for, we have master level degree counselors that are trained and certified in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy, parent-child interactive therapy. They don't have a teacher's license, but yet they have a master's license, and they are licensed by the State Department of Mental Health to actually do therapy. So I think we've got to be careful on some of these that we don't keep putting an onus on all of our schools that they have to have this one specific thing, because that's the status quo, trying to keep the status quo. Now, that being said, in reading through this, I do have some issues as it relates to the financial component. And I want to just pull up because, working in a nonprofit, I want to make sure that, everyone is clear, because I think because charter schools are required in this state to be run by a nonprofit, they need to understand that nonprofits have a higher predisposition to fraud happening in the financial sector. Because there is usually a lack of oversight. So this is one area where I just really want to challenge you all to really focus. We've seen it with nonprofits right here in Tennessee that have had embezzlement problems. It's not restricted to just our nonprofit sector. The school system in the state is constantly, multiple school districts are constantly found by the comptroller to have lack of some financial controls. It happens. So as we go forward, this is one, while I believe, you all have got a great education model, everything is there except for the finance. That's the one area where I think you really need to focus before I can vote to override the school district, because I do think they, as well as our executive director, have it right in this one area. I disagree with MNPS on how they scored everything else of your all's amended application compared to how I believe our reviewers got it right. But this is one area where I just want to make sure you all really go back and do a lot of work on in the financial component to really strengthen that up.
Mr. Tucker.
So this one really gives me heartburn. And I think part of it, I've been thinking a lot about it. And I'll say, I know a lot of people in the charter sector here in Nashville. And I know the people who are involved in great charter schools here in Nashville. And so many of those people are connected to this school and have tried to reach out. And I've kept them at arm's length because I want to keep people, I'm trying to be independent here. But it's hard for me to miss that people who put their money and are offering to put money here, but put their money on Nashville Classical, Valor Collegiate, Nashville Prep, STEM Prep, some of the best, mostly single-site schools in this city are the people who are standing behind these folks. And so that is hard for me to miss. I think this illustrates one of the differences. Most of our schools have CMOs, have sort of a big, backing, and this is a single site application. And I know we've seen a lot of single site applications. I don't know that we've approved any
The State Board of Education has. But
Right.
This entity
body
has
has not, other than, well, Nashville Classical was an extension of a single site, and then Metro got smart and said, we don't want to lose Nashville Classical, and took them back from us. But I think this illustrates the challenge of that, and I think a lot of those schools that I just mentioned, who are knocking it out of the park in this city, by the way, they are some of the best schools in this city, started with back office support from an outside agency and figured it out. And so I am not a finance person. You can ask my husband that. The academic plan here, you know, MNPS says something about special ed, and so I had to pull it up again because I read it, and I don't know what they were talking about, but the plan for special populations here is a great plan for special populations to serve a high number. Now, how you pay the teachers, that's the finance part, and I don't know, and maybe you have special educators who, would take less money to be in this model. I am not sure because they work really hard. That I can't, that goes to the finance side. But here's my concern. I have a lot of concern. I don't want to put extra burden on the staff, but I think any great single-site school for startup is going to require more burden on our staff than a KIP or another CMO. And so that piece, I worry about, but then I look at these, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Commissioner Whitson mentioned, what can we consider from public comment? I mean, we have the Josie Davis Foundation, who is one of those people that invested in all of those great schools, $200,000. You have City Fund that is nationally investing in great schools, offering hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to provide that support. And now you have a new employee. Where my mind is you have this great school in a part of the city that desperately needs a great school. I don't know if everybody looked at the data on the schools that are options for these families right now, but this would be an incredible option. Do we go with the fact that they've tried to cover these gaps, hopefully cover these gaps, cover the financial gaps, hired someone, brought in back office support, have acres of land given to them, and put a little bit of risk on finance? Or do we risk that this school never happens because they put 2 years into this and we deny them and they don't have the ability to stay and continue and come back and kids lose? And so for me, that's a really hard balance, and I have a lot of respect for you, Tess, you know this, but I will have to weigh that in favor of opening this school in a place where kids really need a school like this. And so I will be voting against the recommendation and against the recommendation of MNPS.
And if I think this is a very illustrative of the challenge that the staff is in and that the review committee is in with regard to the appellate role. I just want to name that, and this is something we have talked about a very long time. There were things shared today that I could not consider in my recommendation. And so I can't tell you which way is up, right? And so I just want to name that this is something that I've experienced with the State Board of Education. I've now experienced with the commission, is being an appellate authorizer and knowing that the application process for applicants really begins 6 to 8 months before we see anything. And for a lot of times, our applicants, the first time they're getting quality feedback is when they come to the commission. So I want to name that, and I also want to understand the constraints under which our review committee operates, and also that I operate under my recommendation.
Commissioner Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tess, I have the highest regard for you and your recommendation, but I think in this situation, it's critically important that we look at the overall tone of the approach of this applicant, because in every instance where they have been made aware of shortcomings or problems or concerns, I have seen nothing but an effort to address those shortcomings, problems, and concerns. And I feel under these circumstances that if I were one of the staff people who was going to be working with an organization, I would much rather be working with someone who addresses shortcomings, problems, and concerns when they are brought to their attention than someone who thinks they know it all and doesn't pretend to address those things. That being said, I understand your concerns about the financial status, and there is a lot of risk in this application. And it is the responsibility of this team, if they are approved today, to immediately address those areas of risk. Everything from the day-to-day management of the finances, as Commissioner Smith addressed, is not good enough to have oversight. You have to have good internal controls, and our staff would be looking to this organization to demonstrate internal controls, appropriate record keeping, and appropriate reporting. It is good that you're going to have a third-party consultant who's obviously knowledgeable in charter school operations to help. That goes a long way. And I am particularly impressed with a board member with financial acumen taking time out of what is obviously a busy schedule to come and talk about the oversight function. So for me, this application meets standard on academic plan, meets standard on operations plan. I think that I could reach your conclusion, but based on the same record, I'm reaching a different conclusion. I think it meets standard, and I will be voting in support of overturning the decision of the local school.
Mr. Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Tess, I deeply appreciate your leadership and the team's leadership. I might pick up where Wendy left off on this open door or closed door to single site startups. I appreciate and value high performing CMOs, charter management organizations, for those who are watching and may not be as familiar with all the jargon. I appreciate those who have gotten to a place where they're large organizations, they're able to serve different functions. I also see the lives that have been changed by single site startups and a unique model that meets the needs of families across a community or across a state. And I think that's one of the things that we're attempting to do, which is have a very high quality suite of options for students in the public system, because every child is unique and they don't all learn the same way, and parents and families are looking for models that meet the needs of their children. And so I think that putting a big thumb on the scale for large organizations who have that first 24 months under their belt and may have a decade under their belt, really wonderful in our ecosystem. And I think we want to have an open door for quality on a sharp entrepreneur with a very solid academic plan, facilities that, you know, in this instance, as I look to even previous decisions that we've made on facilities, there are so many things that are in this application that are well down the road in some who are larger organizations or who have more experience. I tend to agree with Commissioner Richards on the when questions get answered, and this was a lot of the back and forth of yesterday. I'm trying to understand what the scope of our review is, and it would be one thing if we were given a packet of information of the amended application and someone said, this is your universe as an appellate body. You live in this universe. You have no other opportunity to gain wisdom. Yet we don't stop at that body of information. We have an interview process. We have public hearings. We have written statements. We have so much more information that are appropriate in our scope of review. For me, I think this will be a continued evolution. What is the information that meets the bar and meets our standard? And so, you know, there are written statements that confirm resource that we have in the record. I'm completely unclear how in the world that documentation hasn't gotten into, I don't know what the appropriate place it's supposed to be. It's somewhere, but I'd love to give clarity, and this is for this application, but also future applications. I'd love to give clarity on what exactly if we have a clear right answer, I'd love to be clear with applicants so they don't have to guess what the right answer is. Clearly, I'm not suggesting that we're hiding the ball or not being clear, but I think as we learn and as we grow as an organization, that the clearer that we can be, the easier it will be to determine what meets the standard and what doesn't. And so I guess I'll end where I think the model is plainly unique. And the parents who have communicated throughout this entire process and families, it has been inspiring. I think that the academic side of the house it's one of the most exciting applications that we've actually had in my time on the commission, and it leaves me enthusiastic about what can be. We have had an experience since I've been on the commission where we asked for a higher bar, where we had more questions. And I think even though I believe this application meets the standard from what we have in the record, I think that the burden should be on this applicant to answer these questions, as Commissioner Richards said. And I think whatever process we have to have in the short term to make sure that's true. I feel like our process and burden was much greater on a previous approval. And I know I'm not going back in that direction. I'd like the obligation not to be on extra burden for our team exclusively, but to make sure these folks continue to answer the call on if we have a question, let's get that answered so we can move forward with the school. So this entire process continues to leave me asking more questions about what is within our scope and what isn't. I actually might suggest that we have a learning opportunity outside of an actual application to understand the parameters of de novo review and continue to learn on what it means in this context, because it's not a pure de novo review based on the information and clarification that we have. And so I'd love to continue learning, and within the record of things that we are within our scope, I'm left with answers to some of the questions that I came in with and that I know you all came with it. So it's a tough spot for you all. And I actually have a lot of questions, but I think given the timing, I want to make sure I share time with my colleagues. But thank you very much, Tess.
Commissioner Levine.
Well, since everybody else started off by saying how much they respect you, if I don't say that, then you'll think I don't respect you. So, Tess, I respect you. This is actually a question. Listening to my colleagues, there's a clear, and having looked at this myself, there's a clear desire to see this school proceed, I think, but some concerns specifically related to the financial piece of this. Is it within our purview to disagree with you and overturn the decision of the district, subject to them coming back at a future time to share with us their progress towards achieving what we're telling them they need to achieve?
So,
Tess, may I jump
yes,
in here?
sure.
Because Alan sort of is where I wanted to ask you. My understanding is that the legislature in this last session changed a provision that affects us, and that is, if I've got it right, and I'm looking at Ashley, that's why I stepped out for a second.
Or actually think I'm right now.
No, that's okay. She can see me, I think, I see her. Is that we have the latitude now to approve an appeal, but to put in there a provision to come back and share with us how they are meeting certain benchmarks. And based on that is to determine, whether they're ready to go forward or not. Am I right? It basically how I've laid it out.
Well, I want our general counsel, because I do want to make sure that we are not approving on a contingency.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
So that is that has not changed in law. And so I
Correct.
think whatever the decision of the commission is, it needs to understand that this is not a contingency on approval. So Ashley, what would you?
Right. Yeah, that's correct. So the commission can approve on a contingency. The new language in the statute allows for approval with the commission's authority to delay opening for up to 1 year through the charter agreement. So you would approve it today. If the commission's will is to delay opening for a year, we would start the school a year from the approval.
So as I understand, we're still in my question, right? So as I understand it, we would approve them without contingency, but we have the authority to delay their opening if we're not satisfied that they've met the benchmarks that we're expecting.
So when we would bring the pathway is typically a school is approved by the commission. There's obviously a 30-day reconciliation period with the district. once that 30-day reconciliation period ends, we begin charter negotiation processes. So when we would bring a charter agreement before the commission staff at that point could say either here are the things within the charter agreement that need to be met, and or here are the things that at this point we're recommending that you all approve an agreement that is a delay for a year. I think what I would like to hear from the commission is not contingency language, but what specifically are you looking for the staff to ensure that the applicant is providing, such that if we were to come for a charter agreement in January, I could say yes or no, we are ready or we are not ready.
Commissioner Levine, thank you for letting me sort of step in, because I wanted to, we have dealt with this kind of an issue in a previous appeal. And out of that, we knew that we wanted to have, if we could, a little more latitude. And that's why this is why Chase is sitting next to me. He reminded me of that. And I asked Ashley to then share with me what did get changed in the law. And I'm not predicting that's where we'll go, but I wanted to put that out here for all commissioners to know that that option does exist, to allow us a little more time to make sure some of the questions have been raised, that we are comfortable and confident that they've been answered, and then we go forward. And what we would do would allow the appellant to be able to go out and secure these things, because they basically have an approval, but there's a period of time for review. If that's why I wanted to sort of make sure that was right, and I apologize, Alan, for interrupting you.
No, I got the answer I was looking for.
Commissioner Woodson.
Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Alan for asking the question. That's what's been in my mind, is how do we get that clarity? And Tess, I appreciate your comments. I'm going to give two specifically. Well, three. Number one, I'd say the list of things that you all have said clearly, we need more information, or what documentation we have is inadequate, and we need a clearer answer. I would say first, trust your instincts on the items that you've already highlighted. I think a few for me, the lack of internal financial oversight. We've received information today that I assume will be able to be documented clearly, and a plan could be clear. That would be helpful information. I'm not exactly clear on what our standard is for financing the long-term facilities, but to the extent that we've got an existing standard, that was one of the items that you had mentioned. Usually we don't actually have someone who not only has a temporary site, but also has land and has so many assets that this one has. But if for some reason our bar is to need that information, I want it to be consistent with previous approvals, but whatever that standard is would be very helpful. The pre-opening funding evidence, again, written comment is a different thing than an actual formal piece of documentation evidencing information. It seems to me that the resources that are being written about in informal ways or spoken about, that's a line of clear evidence that we will need. And just understanding the contingency planning questions that you all had, from the totality of the information that we have before us, it feels like those are done, but to the extent that we need documentation in a format that is meeting our standard, that would be part of the bulk of what answers we would be looking for. And is that helpful?
Yes, and I think, to be honest, like, immediately I need a revised budget with all of this funding that we have now received. And I mean, I will say, like, even with the funding they have, there's still a gap. Right? It doesn't add up to the 565 that they included in their budget. So how are we getting to 565, or what are we changing? And I would say I remained, if they can find teachers for $51,000, more praise to them. But I think, how are we going to actually staffing? We talked about staffing's a huge issue, period. Finding licensed staff is a huge issue. So, I mean, that would be top of my list of, how are we going to fund and actually get the people that will be able to implement the academic model?
Commissioner Smith and then Commissioner Tucker.
And I want to go back, because we Mr. Chairman, you referenced where we did do where we did use the availability to delay. And I want to set, in my mind, just for everybody's that may be watching that goes, why is he going a different way on this one? In that case, it was a district that played, in my mind, games that hurt the applicant's ability to bring forth a quality application. I do not get that with MNPS. Again, I have issues with how they reviewed the two things that our staff said they meet standards on there. On the financial component, though, they had the complete purview. There's still things that are lacking. While and trust me, I can read a cool breeze blowing as well as anyone when I'm sitting up here. So Tess, it looks like you and I are the only ones in this boat right this minute. You know, I understand that, but the things that do concern me around the teachers that do have to be certified, that they're going to have ability to hire, some of the funding gaps, and trust me, I live in the nonprofit world, write grants. There's an ebb and flow. I'm not going to hold that they lost one grant and they've supplemented it somewhere else. I'm not holding that against them, but there's still some serious gaps, especially around computers and technology to make sure everything's ready. That Tess did point out that there's no plan for how they're going to get there to solve those things. So that's why I'm staying here, and I just want to make sure everybody understands why there's the two differences of why I'm not going to be supporting what it appears the rest of my colleagues are going to be going. So I will just sail my little ship over here and sit in the corner. Since I'm now on the island by myself, I'm going to enjoy my Vols victory over here by myself.
See, here we go. He said he was only going to do it yesterday. Now we're back. So thank you, Commissioner Smith. That's your one today, right? Your one time.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Commissioner Tucker.
I'm just excited we finally put Eddie in the corner. That's great. I just wanted to follow up, Tess. I don't know when we normally have staffing plans confirmed, but I do think that is my big concern. And I think they'll figure it out. I think they've shown a capacity to be creative and figure things out, but I would want that figured out quickly because as this commission will ride you if you do not have, particularly any certified teachers, but teachers for students with disabilities. So we don't want to, I don't want to do that. I don't want to open a school and then have to constantly remind them of the law. So that's the piece I would think is important.
Good conversation. I have other comments or questions from commissioners. Commissioner Hanson.
I won't beat any dead elephants or horses or anything else Eddie Smith would like to. So I had a couple of thoughts, and I think I'm heading in the same direction, but I feel like Ms. Gutierrez's kind of involvement addresses a lot of my concerns. I feel like the other parent/volunteer/employee, Cheryl Stratford, is another person that you could kind of poach from this unique cluster of areas where you have talent who wants to work in this kind of model. I also don't think anybody mentioned Oliver, the school in this cluster that has been an unmitigated disaster, where there was a gun at the school and they didn't shut down the school for 30 minutes. And so I think that there's a lot of talent in that cluster who wants to work at a high quality school for kids, regardless of what kind of school it is. So I feel like my questions on the lack of financial oversight and who is that person was answered by Ms. Gutierrez's involvement. I feel like there was not enough weight given to the City Fund and the Josie Davis Foundation. Wendy mentioned it, but these are the people behind some of the absolute best schools in not just Nashville, but in the region. So I feel like if they've committed $438,000, I forgot volunteer schools, $438,000, 80% of what they need, that's a good start. Right, that's the gap you mentioned is still there, but I also feel like the City Fund has dispensed over $100 million in the last 2 years. Josie Davis Foundation has $99.2 million in assets right now, so I feel like there's a way to bridge the gap there. I also feel like in terms of just the quality of the board members, so I know a number of these people from Nashville, but Scott Campbell started Persist Nashville, which was a slam dunk success for helping high school kids from Nashville, both MNPS district schools and charter schools, get to and through college, and has raised boatloads of money. It looked like the board secretary, Daryl Hawks, had done a lot with building nonprofits Project Return and Pro-Employment, bridging the gap from prison and long-term employment. I know we heard from Mr. Wainick, and I love that, among other things, he spends time understanding how tax dollars are spent, so I wish we had more Mr. Wainicks. and then the involvement of Mr. Renfro and Ms. Savage themselves and their backgrounds and your CFO to go. So I won't relitigate all that, but I'm where I need to be.
Thank you. Any other commissioner looking to be recognized? Commissioner Patterson.
I'd like to call the
Jump in.
question.
No, I'm with you. All right. So typically, we have a recommendation from our executive director. So is there a motion to adopt the resolution to uphold the denial of Tennessee Nature Academy's amended application? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any other discussion? Chase, call the roll.
Commissioner Hanson.
So to clarify, we are voting to uphold the executive director's recommendation.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes,
So
we
then
are.
I would be nay.
Commissioner Hanson votes no. Commissioner Levine?
Yes.
Votes aye. Commissioner Patterson?
No.
Votes no. Commissioner Richards?
No.
Votes no. Commissioner Smith?
No.
Votes no.
Oh, sorry, yes. Going
Says,
the wrong
says the former legislator.
Co-
It is.
Commissioner Smith votes aye. Commissioner Tucker?
No.
Votes no. Commissioner Woodson? Votes no. Chairman Griscoll?
Aye.
Votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes and 5 nays. The motion fails.
So now do I have a motion to overturn the denial of the Tennessee Nature Academy's amended application?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Chase, call the roll.
Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Levine?
No.
Votes no. Commissioner Patterson?
Yes.
Votes aye. Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Smith?
No.
Votes no. Commissioner Tucker?
Yes.
Votes aye. Commissioner Woodson? Votes aye. Chairman Griscoll?
No.
Votes no. Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes and 3 nays. The motion is approved.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. And I think out of here, there's some other things, Chase, hopefully as you're looking at the next session, that maybe we look for further clarification. Our next appeal is Binghampton Community School. Commissioners Woodson, Richards, and Levine have recused themselves from this appeal on our agenda today. This decision is made in consultation with our general counsel. Chase, can you note for the record the number of written statements received in support of each party in the appeal? And then can you please introduce individuals who registered to comment in support of the applicant and those who registered to comment in support of Memphis Shelby County Schools?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For written comments, we received none for Memphis Shelby County Schools and none for Binghampton Community School. And we also have no one signed up to provide public comment today at this hearing.
In accordance with Commission Policy 2.000, a representative of each appeal has the opportunity to submit a written statement or be recognized for up to 2 minutes in advance of the Commission's discussion on the appeal. Chase, can you please read any statements received and introduce any representatives who are here today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first written statement is from Maslow Development Group. To whom it may concern, it is our firm belief, along with the residents of Binghampton, that the educational needs of the community continue to go unsupported. While we have heard loudly and clearly that the community of Binghampton desires a high-quality school that serves the needs of all students, we believe the support of the LEA, Memphis Shelby County Schools, is a critical element to this. Furthermore, with the recent departure of our proposed leader, we recognize that our capacity as a sponsor and school board to identify and recruit a replacement school leader cannot be retroactively considered during the appeal process. With that said, we respectfully accept the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission's affirmation of the Memphis Shelby County School Board of Education decision to deny the amended application for Binghampton Community School. Also, Mr. Chairman, this is from the Memphis Shelby County Schools Charter Schools Office. First, Memphis Shelby County Schools would like to recognize the thorough planning and execution of the Tennessee Public Charter Commission staff and commission members throughout a robust appellate cycle. While also engaging in the commission's normal authorizing duties, MSCS appreciates the commitment of the team to upholding the Tennessee Quality Charter authorizing standards and ensuring transparent practices throughout the process. MSCS believes its transparent standards for our charter schools based on the Tennessee Quality charter authorizing standards. As an authorizer, we use this as our rubric to ensure consistency and equality in meeting the appropriate standards for approval and authorization. MSCS's authorization processes were recently reviewed by the Tennessee State Board, and out of a possible 4 points, we earned 3.5. The appellate cycle and the recommendation from the executive director affirm our standard of review to ensure a fair and rigorous process for all applicants. As an authorizer, MSCS wants to ensure that these fair practices are implemented for strong outcomes in our communities. Principle 1 of the Quality Authorizing Standard states a quality authorizer sets high but obtainable standards for approving charter applicants. Standard 2 states a quality authorizer grants charters only to applicants who demonstrate strong capacity to establish and operate a quality charter school. The rigorous review and approval are based on the Department of Education's application rubric, in which an applicant must meet or exceed standards in each of the required sections. In following the TDOE scoring rubric, MSCS determined that Binghamton Community School provided insufficient evidence of capacity in the academic, operational, and financial sections, and thus only partially meet the standard for approval. Additionally, as noted by the executive director's report, the evidence was provided in the application was heavily dependent upon the proposed head of school's expertise. With the unexpected departure of the proposed head of school, BCS further demonstrates that it is unable to meet or exceed the standards for approval at this time. This application process and subsequent appellate review by the Commission reaffirms our decision and has provided a strong application process that directly aligns with the required standard of review. In the case of BCS, the application partially met standards in each of the 3 sections, and the school is not positioned to open successfully without additional clarification in their academic, operations, and financial plans. MSCS appreciates the Commission's time and respectfully requests that the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission uphold the Executive Director's recommendation.
Tess, you are now recognized for your presentation to the Commission.
And I have gotten a cup of coffee, so I'm ready to go for the next 3. So as was stated, the appeal in front of the discussion for this period is for Binghamton Community Schools. So it is proposing to locate in the Binghamton community of Shelby County and to serve grades kindergarten through 5 when fully built out. The Binghamton Community Schools was reviewed by a Memphis Shelby County review committee and then ultimately recommended for denial and was denied by the Memphis Shelby County Board of Education in July. Upon appeal, the commission assembled a review committee that was made up of internal and external experts and conducted a de novo on the record review of the amended application. We held a public hearing, we accepted public comment. And we also held a capacity interview with the sponsor, and I've reviewed all information that's available from the sponsor in the district. Based on this process, I've determined that the amended application for Binghamton Community Schools does not meet the standards for approval at this time. I do want to acknowledge that I do think that the Binghamton community of Memphis could be a great location for a charter school. And particularly the one based on the academic vision that was outlined by the sponsor. It is a unique idea and something that I do think the community needs. However, I cannot recommend the approval of this application at this time. Particularly, I want to call out the clear mission and vision of the application and the academic model that is proposed. It's a unique model of the IB program and something that I think could be a real benefit to that community. However, the academic plan, the operations plan, and the financial plan are primarily based on a now former head of school. And while it is not a requirement for an applicant to name a head of school in their application, this application is based on this individual's expertise. The financial grants were based on this individual's participation in the BES fellowship. And with that individual departing, there are significant parts of the academic and operational and financial plan that are now in question. Specifically, there were pieces around how will the sponsor and governing board replace this school leader, and will the school leader have the academic, operational, and financial expertise to implement the plan that was as written. And while I also want to note that during the capacity interview, we asked about the community support for the school. And it was noted that a lot of the community support had been directly tied to the school leader who is now departed. So a question of whether or not there would be maintaining the community support and parent connection to the school when and if a new school leader was identified. I do want to acknowledge that I appreciate the sponsor, Maslow Development, and their experience in open and operating charter schools. And I do think that the proposed governing board was diverse. It had a variety of academic, operational, and financial expertise, as well as representation from the community. I think it's a unique idea to house a charter school in a multi-use development area of Binghamton. However, those pieces cannot overcome the substantial challenges that the application now face with the school leader now departing. As you all know, it is the statutory charge of the commission to review an amended application. And in this case, the district reviewed an application that is substantially different than what we are faced with today. There are significant questions that remain to be addressed by the sponsor and the governing board, and it is my hope that the sponsor and the governing board do take this feedback. It is my hope that they can find a new school leader who may or may not meet the academic model that were proposed in this application, and resubmit that to the district. As I've noted, the financial plan and the funding that was associated within the financial plan were specifically tied to the former school leader's participation in the Building Excellent Schools Fellowship. When asked about this in the public hearing, it was noted that the sponsor and the governing board would have to go after additional funds in order to make up for these losses. Because of this, I do not believe in the totality of the information here today that this school is ready for approval, that the application meets or exceeds the standards for approval. And therefore, it is my recommendation that the commission uphold Memphis-Shelby County Schools' denial of the Binghamton Community Schools application. And I am happy to take any questions at this time.
Do commissioners have questions or comments for Tess? Commissioner Tucker.
Only 5 of us. I get to talk the whole time. No, I just wanted to comment that this is like the reverse of the last one, right? The new information really hurts the applicant instead of helping them. But I 100% agree with you on this. Leadership matters. Mm-hmm. The great charter schools that I know of have great leaders. And so hopefully they're able to find someone who can have either this vision or another vision that will inspire that community as well, because it does sound like from all the material that they really could use a great school option.
Commissioner Patterson.
Tess, I just had a question about the letter that was submitted from the applicant, and I don't know if other commissioners had this same or similar question. So they noted that they didn't believe that we could retroactively consider something during the appeal process, but then in the second sentence they said that they would accept our affirmation of the MSCS decision. So I don't know if it was a bit contrary to me. I don't know if you read or have any other insight to this particular letter or statement.
We do not have a further insight. We reviewed the letter when it came in, and I think potentially based on the entire development plan of that area, that continuing through the process, even if they recommend an affirmation of the recommendation, acknowledges, I think, where they sit in this. And I also, want to acknowledge that, as I shared, the naming of a school leader is not required, and we find many applicants do not name a school leader. But I think the fatal flaw of the application was that the academic model and operational model and financial model were based on this individual's expertise. This individual was going to be providing a lot of the special education services, and now it comes with, you can't rewrite what you have submitted at this point. And there are too many questions and holes to be filled with that individual now leaving. So I think that was generally the intent of that statement.
Commissioner Patterson, yes.
So I have a follow-up question and a comment. And again, just for my clarification, so the applicant has not affirmed that they will get another leader, or they are in the process of getting another leader, because BES is, of course, a very reputable organization, and they have had great success in Memphis in particular. So if they were to get another leader, it would certainly strengthen the application. But do we have any update in terms of the process for securing a new leader?
So what we were told, and Beth, remind me if I'm correct, it was they are certainly understand that they need to find a new leader. It is not at the highest priority at this moment in time because they are trying to get through this process. I think their ideal school leader identification was by January-ish of 2023. But there is, certainly I think they said they would look at the BES fellowship to see if they had any available candidates, but it was not the expectation that was the only option that they would look for. I think not only was the concern about not having a clear timeline and plan in place, but understanding that you are looking for quite a unique individual to implement what has been written, and whether or not that individual would be available if you're searching for a new leader again.
And just a final comment. I mean, certainly I'm very familiar with Maslow, their track record. Certainly our colleague, Derwin Sisnet, has had a successful track record leading Gestalt Community Schools. So the application in totality certainly was strong. I understand and appreciate the gap with the leadership. So again, the letter raises more questions for me than it does affirmations. It's my hope that they will continue through the process and come back either to the district or us, because Binghamton is certainly a community that is in great need of great quality schools, and parents deserve a choice. So I just wanted to share that. So my fellow commissioners from other parts of the state appreciated that there is a great need in this community. This is certainly a great organization. It just seems like they are at the time sort of the victim of an unfortunate circumstance.
Other question or comments? Seeing none, we'll now be voting on the Binghamton Community School Charter Appeal. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to uphold the denial of the amended application? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other conversations or discussion? Chase, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Hanson? Aye. Votes aye. Commissioner Patterson?
Yes.
Votes aye. Commissioner Smith? Aye. Votes aye. Commissioner Tucker? Aye. Votes aye. Chairman Griscom?
Aye.
Votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes. The motion is approved.
Thank you. And we are now back to 8 again. So, Tess, if you're ready, the next appeal on our agenda is for Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy. Chase, can you note for the record the number of written statements received in support of each party in the appeal? And then can you please introduce individuals who registered to comment in support of Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy, and those who registered to comment in support of the Memphis Shelby County Schools. And in this case, the use of the word volunteer does not refer to a school in Knoxville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received 0 in-person comment for Memphis Shelby County Schools or Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy. For written comments, there was 1 submitted on behalf of Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy, and none submitted on behalf of Memphis Shelby County Schools.
In accordance with Commission Policy 2.000, a representative of each appeal has the opportunity to submit a written statement or be recognized for up to 2 minutes in advance of the Commission's discussion on the appeal. Chase, can you please read any statements that were received and introduce anyone, a representative who may be here today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy did not submit a written statement. However, I do have a written statement here from Memphis Shelby County Schools. First, Memphis Shelby County Schools would like to recognize the thorough planning and execution of the Charter Commission staff and commission members throughout a robust appellate cycle, while also engaging in the Commission's normal authorizing duties. MSCS appreciates the commitment of the team to upholding Tennessee Quality Charter authorizing standards and ensuring transparent practices throughout the process. MSCS believes in transparent standards for our charter schools based in these quality authorizing standards. As an authorizer, we use this as our rubric to ensure consistency and quality in meeting the appropriate standards for approval and authorization. MSCS's authorization processes were recently reviewed by the State Board of Education, and out of a possible 4 points, MSCS earned a 3.5. The appellate cycle and the recommendation from the Executive Director affirm our standard of review to ensure a fair and rigorous process for all our applicants. As an authorizer, MSCS wants to ensure that these fair practices are implemented for strong outcomes in our communities. Principle 1 of these quality authorizing standards states, a quality authorizer sets high but obtainable standards for approving charter applicants. Standard 2 states that a quality authorizer grants charters only to applicants who demonstrate strong capacity to establish and operate a quality charter school. The rigorous review and approval are based on the Department of Education's application and rubric, in which an applicant must meet or exceed standards in each of the required sections. In the following DOE scoring rubric, MSCS determined that Binghamton... Sorry, this is the wrong one.
It's good to know that my handler needs to be handled.
Yeah. Trajan is actually the one that...
Oh, no, come on.
Okay. My apologies. In the following, the Department of Education scoring rubric, MSCS determined that Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy did not provide evidence of capacity in the required academic, operational, and financial sections, and thus did not meet the standards for approval. Specifically, as noted by the Executive Director's report, the absence of evidence is demonstrated in the academic section, where questions remain as to the lack of plan for students with disabilities and the lack of evidence for community demand. In the financial plan, where questions remain as to its funding and budgeting plan, and in the operational plan, where questions remain as to the relationship between TVMA and Charter 1. This application process and subsequent appellate review by the Commission reaffirms that MSCS has provided a strong application process that directly aligns with the required standard of review. As an authorizer, it is MSCS's responsibility to ensure that the plan articulated in the proposed charter school's application can be executed to fidelity to provide strong outcomes for students. In the case of TVMA, the application does not meet standards in each of the 3 sections, and the school is not positioned to open successfully without significant revisions and clarifications in their academic, operations, and financial plans. Memphis Shelby County Schools appreciates the Commission's time and respectfully requests that the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission uphold the Executive Director's recommendation to affirm the Shelby County Board of Education's decision to deny the charter application for Tennessee Military Academy.
So let me call on our Executive Director, Tess Stovall, to share with us her presentation.
Thank you. The presentation here today for this appeal is for Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy. They are proposing to locate in the East Memphis or Cordova community of Shelby County. Their amended application was reviewed by a review committee in Memphis Shelby County Schools and was denied by the Board of Education in July of 2022. I have, while reviewing and going through our entire process in terms of conducting a de novo review, holding a public hearing, and accepting public comment, I have determined that this amended application does not meet the standard for approval at this time. While I commend the sponsor for their vision and for their desire to bring a military-based educational model to the area, there were clear deficiencies throughout the entire application. It raised fundamental concerns regarding the academic, operational, and financial plan. The sponsor does not have a clear plan to serve students with disabilities or English learners. And there was a general lack of clarity surrounding the class structure of the school, curriculum choices, instructional model, and daily schedule. There also was a lack of sufficient evidence of community and parent support to meet their enrollment projections. The Commission did receive roughly 40 written comments after the public hearing. However, it was not indicative of them being able to meet their enrollment projections of 485 students in year 1. Also, there was a lack of contingency planning should enrollment not materialize. I think operationally, my biggest concern is the proposed relationship with Charter 1, which is a for-profit management organization. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 4913-124, a charter school cannot contract with a for-profit entity for any management or operations of a school. And while in the capacity interview, the sponsor explained that Charter One would simply be in a consulting relationship, it was ultimately based on what was described about the services that would be provided by Charter One. It felt like it would be prohibited by Tennessee state law. And without the relationship with a proposed education service provider, I'm far less confident in the governing board's and school leaders' ability to execute on the proposed plan. Additionally, there was a lack of a clear plan to recruit and retain licensed teachers. And while I appreciate the applicant's desire to, within their academic plan, to focus on veterans or individuals who are returning from the military, it is not in compliance with state law to utilize individuals such as volunteers or anyone else who is not licensed and certified by the state of Tennessee. Finally, there was not a reasonable budget for the school. And aside from there were numerous areas where there was misalignment, both within the application, between the budget, as well as the capacity interview. An example of this is in the capacity interview was discussed that there would be 2 classroom teachers, which is not included within the budget. There was a lack of financial contingency planning should enrollment not materialize. There was a lack of evidence of expertise around costs and reasonable assumptions and financial expertise to oversee the charter school. And while I recognize the applicant's passion and vision for this proposed model, at this point there is insufficient evidence across all sections of the plan and proposed application to meet the high expectations that we have for approving an application. And therefore, it is my recommendation that the commission uphold Memphis-Shelby County Schools' decision to deny the Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy amended application. Thank you.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions or comments? Commissioner Patterson.
I just wanted to state on this particular instance, I was able to attend the public hearing for Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy. And I think this is another instance when we think about our charter sector, especially in the Memphis and Shelby County community. These are the types of innovative models that our children deserve. Unfortunately, there was not sufficient evidence either in their initial proposal to the district, their appeal to the district, and then even to us. There was really no improvement made. So it is my hope that the gentlemen, and they were very impressive veterans, gentlemen that had military experience serving our community and serving our country, that they do partner with an organization that could enhance their application, because again, these are the types of innovative models that we were created to support, that serve our children and students in a very different way. But unfortunately, at this time, the applicant and the application just weren't where it needed to be.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Tucker.
I want to join in the appreciation for an innovative model. A lot of veterans in my family have a lot of respect for the military and veterans. But if you do come back, special education is not something you do in study hall with volunteers. You actually need to have someone on your planning team who knows how to educate all kids and what the rules are, but also what best practices are. So I would encourage them to come back. I love innovative models as well, but make sure that you are being inclusive of all students in that community and giving all of them a chance for academic success.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Hanson.
Can I just ask Executive Director to restate what she said about the for-profit piece, just so it's very clear for each other?
Sure. So Tennessee Code Annotated specifically says, 4913-124 says, a charter school cannot contract with the for-profit entity for the management and operations of a school. And throughout the application, the capacity interview, the Charter One was participating in the process. They were answering questions for the governing board. They were clearly relying on a level of expertise from the organization. When pressed about this, the governing board said that they would only be contracting with them for a 3-year period for consulting services, but we did not feel like that would meet the letter of the law and the expectation that that a for-profit entity is not involved in the management and oversight of the school.
And commissioners will recall, we've had this same issue on some of the other appeals that we've considered during this 13. So just wanted to share that. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll now be voting on the Tennessee Volunteer. It rolls off my tongue, even though Terrence had a problem with it. Military Academy Charter School Appeal. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to uphold the denial of Tennessee Volunteer Military Academy's amended application?
Second.
Any other discussion? Chase, call the roll.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Levine.
Yes.
Votes aye. Commissioner Patterson.
Yes.
Votes aye. Commissioner Richards.
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Smith. Votes aye. Commissioner Tucker.
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Woodson. Votes aye. Chairman Griscom.
Aye.
Votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes. The motion is approved.
Thank you. And for all of you all, don't celebrate yet because this is the last of 13. So we've gotten there and we've done pretty well. Our last agenda item today is the appeal from Academy of the Arts Charter High School. Commissioner Patterson has recused himself from this appeal on our agenda today. This decision was made in consultation with our general counsel. Chase, can you note for the record the number of written statements received in support of each party in the appeal? And then can you please introduce individuals who registered to comment in support of the Academy of the Arts Charter High School and those who registered to comment in support of Fayette County Schools?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The commission received no written comments from Fayette County Schools or from Academy of the Arts Charter High School. For in-person public comment, I have Stephanie Neal.
Chairman Griscom, Commissioners, and Commission staff. My name is Stephanie Neal, and I serve as the Chief District Support Officer for Fayette County Public Schools and serves as the Chair of the Charter School Amended Application Review Committee in Fayette County. Also attending today's meeting is Dr. Versi Hamlet, Superintendent of Fayette County Public Schools, and Board Attorney Tom Miner. On behalf of the Fayette County Board of Education, I would like to thank Executive Director Stovall, the Commission staff, and the Review Committee for their hard work in order to conduct their review of the appeal regarding the charter school application in Fayette County. Fayette County Public Schools agree with the findings of the Charter Application Review Committee and the recommendations of Executive Director Stovall. Therefore, we respectfully request the approval of the resolution by the Commission regarding the Academy of the Arts Charter High School amended application appeal as posted on the Commission website in order to affirm the decision of the Fayette County Board of Education pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 49-13-105A. Thank you.
In accordance with Commission Policy 2.000, a representative of each appeal has opportunity to submit a written statement or be recognized for up to 2 minutes in advance of the Commission's discussion on the appeal. Chase, can you please read any statements received and introduce any representative who's with us today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Mr. Tom Miner from Fayette County Schools.
Chairman Grisham, Commissioners, Commission staff, good morning. My name is Tom Miner, and I am the General Counsel for Fayette County Public Schools. I've held this position continuously since 1995, and I'm also a lifelong Fayette County resident. As is detailed by Director Stovall in her report to the Commission, Fayette County Public Schools remains under an active federal desegregation consent order. Site visits by the attorneys for the Department of Justice and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund are currently scheduled for, I guess, a couple of weeks away, November 2 through 4 of this year, at which time every facet of the Fayette County Public School system will be both observed and analyzed. These visits will also coincide with a regular monthly board meeting, and it is hoped that this will be the last site visit. Our last one was in December of 2017, before unitary status can be sought by our district. As is also detailed by Director Stovall in her report, the district's standalone virtual school, although approved by the Department of Education in June of this year for operation for the 2022-2023 school year, remains on hold as the Department of Justice and LDF reviews and analyzes how it could impact the district's ability to comply with its consent order obligations. Respectfully, for all the reasons set forth in Director Stovall's report, it is the belief of our school system that the charter application should not be approved, and Director Stovall's recommendation should be upheld. Thank you.
So we'll now move to a presentation from our Executive Director, Tess Stovall, on the Academy of the Arts Charter High School. Tess, you're recognized.
Thank you. The last appeal for discussion today is Academy of the Arts Charter High School in Fayette County. So this school is proposing to locate in the Somerville community of Fayette County. It would serve a high school population, so grades 9 through 12 when fully built out. It was recommended for denial by the Fayette County Review Committee, and then subsequently that denial was upheld by the Fayette County Board of Education. Upon appeal, the commission staff conducted a de novo on the record review of the amended application. We held a public hearing and accepted public comment. We also reviewed the entirety of the information submitted by both parties. I determined, based on this information, that the application does not meet or exceed the standards outlined in state law for approval at this time. And while I do commend the sponsor for its vision and desire to bring an arts-focused model to Fayette County, there are concerns with regard to the academic plan, the operational plan, and the financial plan to be successful. There are specific concerns with regard to the proposed enrollment at the charter school and their ability to meet the enrollment target. Specifically, the charter school would make up approximately half of the one high school in Fayette County's enrollment. Therefore, there is not a demonstrated desire or demand such that it would, in essence, reduce the enrollment at the high school by half. And while I do acknowledge that in the future there may be population growth within Fayette County because of the Blue Oval megasite, the charter school may, as they said, attract some private and homeschool students. I did not see a realistic plan to meet the enrollment projections, as well as if there was a sufficient contingency plan in place should enrollment projections not materialize. Additionally, the applicant mentioned using a weighted lottery for enrollment, which is in contrast to what's currently allowed in state law. Additionally, there were concerns that I have with regard to the staffing plan. And while I appreciate the vision of having instructors who would be focused and have expertise in an arts model, there was not a clear recruitment and retention plan to have those staff be hired and be retained in a very rural community of Tennessee. The applicant stated that they would partner with Arts Impact, which is a national organization, as well as other national platforms. But many of their proposed partnerships were located within Shelby County and not Fayette County. It is unclear if the pay structure that they are proposing in their budget would actually attract and retain the talented personnel that they need. Additionally, I want to note that there were questions with regard to their facility and whether or not the proposed facility that they have identified would meet the needs that they are planning for an arts-focused model. Also, I have concerns about the financial plan of the sponsor. There were numerous grants within the budget that had not been awarded or would materialize, nor was there any information about commitments of those grants. There was a lack of contingency planning should, as I mentioned, enrollment not materialize or the missing startup expenses have to be filled. Many of the expense assumptions were not reasonable, and it would necessitate immediate contingency planning if this application was approved. Finally, I did want to note, as Mr. Minor stated, that the charter school application was submitted in a county where there is an active federal desegregation order. And there is ambiguity with regard to the order of the process and roles of the Federal District Court, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the district, and the sponsor with regard to consideration of a charter school in Fayette County. This was a conversation that took place at the public hearing, with individuals on both sides sharing what they believe that process should be. The commission is not in a position to make a determination on this process or these legal issues, and my recommendation is simply based on whether or not the sponsor's amended application meets or exceeds the standards in state law. At this point, I do not believe that this application is ready for approval and has a high likelihood of success. My recommendation was the same recommendation that it was last year, is that I think there are some substantial issues within this sponsor's plan within Fayette County that need to be addressed prior to there could be a recommendation for approval from myself and from this body. And at this time, I recommend the commission uphold Fayette County's decision to deny Academy of the Arts High School's amended application. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments, Commissioner Smith?
Just a quick question. From last year to this year, I'm just curious because, again, we've seen a lot since all of this. Did you see any significant progress in the application from what we saw last year to this year? Because it didn't feel that way to me, so I'm curious as to your...
I would say no. And what is actually more disappointing is the general counsel and I had a feedback conversation with this applicant that we offer to all applicants after the commission's decision last year, and we gave some very pointed feedback. And I was very disappointed that that feedback wasn't accepted and changed. And I think in particular, a lot of the letters of support and parent communication that was included was from last year, not this year. And so although I would say they have diversified and changed their governing board, I think that is probably the one place where there was material changes. Otherwise, I would say when I was reviewing the application, I did not see substantial improvements or changes from the one that was reviewed last year.
And the reason I ask that is because, you know, as we've gone through this process, again, noise outside of this room has been there. And I want to state this unequivocally. I believe everyone is up here because we all support parental choice and options that are best for kids. But when an operator doesn't even want to listen to make things better, we're not a rubber stamp committee, and they need to be held accountable to that. So it's one of the things that I think that, you know, future operators need to understand is we don't forget. I mean, I'm not going to pull out we're going to remember like an elephant line, you know, but I know I just did. But we've got to make sure that everyone understands when a district's wrong, and when they're right. When an authorizer, a charter applicant is right, they're right, and when they're wrong, they're wrong. And in this case, they're just wrong. They didn't take any of the feedback you all gave, didn't make any attempts to approve their application, just made an assumption that by appealing to this body, they were going to get approved. And I think that is a very dangerous thing for applicants to think. So I just want to make sure that I'm being very clear that we're looking at these, we're looking at what's the process you've gone through and how did it compare from when you started to where you are now. And if you're not showing any progress or taking any of our recommendations, I'm sorry, I don't want you part of our schools. It's just not something that I want, and I know that the district probably doesn't either.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith, for not mentioning red in front of the elephant. Commissioner Richards.
Thank you, Chairman. Executive Director Stovall, I want to commend you on your hard work to go ahead and consider this application, and I completely agree with your findings. I also commend you for not being distracted by this issue of a pending active federal desegregation order. I think even from Mr. Minor's comments, it is apparent that the existence of that order and its implication for a proposed charter in Fayette County is something that's left to the district court and not something for this board to consider or undertake. Had this application been one that should have been approved and that we would be approving, at that point in time it would be up to the applicant to engage in the appropriate process to deal with the court and the parties on the desegregation order. And I think Mr. Minor's comments reflected that, in that the virtual school that's being operated or proposed for Fayette County, having now been approved for implementation, is in the process of going through that as a part of their public school district. A charter school recognized in Fayette County would be a public school and would have to go through the same process of working through the court and the parties to comply with whatever are the dictates of the court. So I think it's very important to note for the record, because there are other counties with federal court orders that they're operating under, that I believe the approach that you took was not only appropriate, it was legally warranted. And I thank you for your diligence in this area and the diligence of our general counsel in guiding us through this process.
Other comments? Seeing none, we'll now be voting on the Academy of the Arts Charter High School appeal. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to uphold the denial of Academy of the Arts Charter High School's amended application? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Any other discussion? Chase, call the roll.
Commissioner Hanson? Aye. Votes aye. Commissioner Levine?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Woodson? Aye. Votes aye. Chairman Griscom?
Aye.
Votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 7 ayes. The motion is approved.
Thank you. All right, everybody, before you exhale, 13. We did it. You did it. The team over here to my left, thank you all so much, because I know it's been not only a trying period of time for pulling all this information together, the hearings and all that, but also I think probably a trying period of time for you all, as we've had a number of discussions about us, about the things that we're doing among a variety of people over these, it seems like a lifetime, but it's only been about 6 months now. And so I want you all to know your work is appreciated, and I hope the actions that you've seen taken by this commission over the past couple weeks are a reflection of the good work that you've done, Tess, of the work that you did in pulling together all this material and providing to us, and for many of us who now can rest our eyes for a time, because it was voluminous reading, but it was good reading, and it was very instructive to us to be able to see all the work that's gone in and has done this. I also think it was interesting for, again, those who have said this body is sort of, has no voice, opinion, or differences at all, that we just sort of do whatever. I think today's vote on the Nature Academy sort of sends a signal that there are independent minds up here that express themselves, that look at different ways materials put together, that are challenged to make sure that what we authorize, based on the work you all provided to us, represents a good choice for public school in this state, and that's what we're all about. We've known that ever since all of us came together after the governor nominated us and after the General Assembly approved all of us to serve on this panel. And I think these past several weeks or past several months are a good reflection. I want to thank every commissioner for your hard work, for your dedication, your good questions. And again, I will say to the staff and Tess, to you as the leader, thank you all. Much appreciated. And if any other commissioner have a comment, Commissioner Levine.
I do. Mr. Chairman, I think when all of us were appointed to this, we all came from different places. I didn't know most of you before we were appointed. And there was an article that was in the newspaper, I guess last week or the week before. I don't know if it was a newspaper or on a news station, whatever it was, but the headline was something about, this commission's full of conflicts, and accused me of having a conflict of interest because I serve on a not-for-profit board that advocates for better student achievement. It's kind of hard to be against that. I think any parent who wants children to learn could be accused, I guess, of having a conflict of interest if they want to give parents options for their kids to be able to get them in the best environment to learn. I really did take exception to the conclusions in that article. No one had spoken with me before writing that article or publishing that story. I don't make any apologies for being involved in efforts to ensure that our education system is doing a better job educating kids. I think it's full of incredible teachers, administrators, parents, volunteers who work really hard in very difficult environments, but so do I remember visiting the Rocket Ship Academy here in Nashville, and I remember walking down the hall with a teacher who had been in a non-charter public school for her career and was now at this particular charter school. And I asked her, why are you here and not in a traditional public school? And she gave me all the reasons why. She genuinely appreciates that environment and how she's able to improve the quality of education for her students. She was there because she wants those kids to learn. And I do not make any apology for being an advocate for that teacher's right to teach in an environment where she feels she can do the best good for those kids. Almost every one of the kids in that school were low-income minorities. And so I really wish those who want to put wedges between all of us or have made ideological decisions that there's only one way to teach a child would understand that it is not a conflict of interest for those of us who are advocates for better learning to come here and give an objective review of the options we're being given. And I think we have demonstrated and continue to demonstrate that we're more than capable of seeing what works and what doesn't work and having the strength and backbone to say so. And so I'm sorry that there's those who, I guess, don't want us to succeed, but thank God for the students that we've approved, for the schools that we've approved, that they're going to have that opportunity in a school that is prepared to succeed because we've gone through a stringent process overseen by qualified staff who are passionate about these kids. And I just want to say, I'm not going to say I'm offended because nothing surprises me in the media anymore, but I'm just grateful for the work you guys are doing despite the unfair criticisms or conclusions about our motives. So my motive is because I'm here because I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm doing this because I really do want these kids to have the best opportunities to learn. And in a state where in communities that our third grade reading proficiency is not even 40%, I'm not somebody who's going to defend that status quo. And I will not make apologies for trying to find different and better ways to give them opportunities to learn. So I just had to get that off my chest because I do feel that series of stories did somewhat of a disservice to the people on this commission who had not even yet had the opportunity to do its work.
Thank you. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Do I have anybody who wants to talk anymore?
Well, if you're asking.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Thank you. Our next meeting, regular scheduled meeting, is January 27, 2023. Thank you.